The dog wouldn't stop staring at one patch of ground. For 3 days after Walt Corbin vanished, his cattle dog sat in the exact same spot on the fire road, facing the same direction, refusing food, refusing to move unless someone carried her away. Search teams walked past her 100 times. Nobody thought to ask why she'd chosen that spot. On Thursday, August 14th, 1969, a ranch caretaker disappeared from a property he'd worked his entire adult life. And it would take 8 years, a criminal confession, and a shovel to find out what she already knew.
Thornwell Ranch sat in the dry hill country of Southern California, leased out to film crews for westerns when it wasn't running cattle. Walt Corbin, 34, had been caretaker there for 9 years, mending fences, managing the herd, keeping strangers off land his employer's family had held since the 1920s. The deed for that land was old, and according to the county clerk who filed it, a little strange. The northeast boundary didn't line up cleanly with any adjoining survey, a discrepancy nobody had bothered to resolve for 40 years. Next door, a loose commune calling itself the Family of Light had set up camp that spring, led by a soft-spoken drifter named Eli Marsh. Walt ran them off his fence line twice that summer. Both times, witnesses said, Marsh simply smiled and walked away.
Walt's routine rarely changed. Up before sunrise, coffee on the porch, rounds on the fence line with his dog Juno trotting ahead of him. He wasn't a talker. Neighbors described him as steady, private, the kind of man who noticed when a gate was left open a half-inch too wide. One detail stuck with his sister later. In the first week of August 1969, Walt mentioned, almost as a joke, that Juno had started refusing to cross onto the northeast corner of the property, the same stretch with the boundary discrepancy. He figured she'd smelled a coyote. He didn't think about it again. Meanwhile, at the commune, county deputies received a tip about stolen vehicles hidden on the property. The tip was accurate. It would not stay quiet for long.
The raid came on Tuesday, August 5th, 1969. Deputies recovered 2 stolen trucks and arrested no one. The commune had been tipped off just hours before. Marsh grew convinced someone informed on them. He had exactly one enemy on record, the caretaker who chased his people off twice. Walt failed to show up for his morning rounds 9 days later, on that Thursday, August 14th. His truck was found abandoned on the fire road an hour after, keys still in the ignition, driver's door hanging open. No blood, no signs of a struggle. Juno was found sitting nearby, facing northeast. Here is where the case stopped behaving like a missing persons report and started behaving like something else. Investigators pulled the county's old land records to check who else might have access to that boundary corner, and found that the discrepancy in the deed wasn't a clerical error at all. It matched, almost exactly, the outline of a homestead that had stood on that same ground in the 1880s, decades before Thornwell Ranch existed. County records showed the homestead's occupants, a family of 5, had been reported missing in the winter of 1887. No bodies were ever recovered. No explanation was ever filed. The case had simply been closed for lack of evidence, the same words that would end up in Walt's file 82 years later.
Search parties combed the scrubland for weeks. Nothing surfaced. The commune broke camp and scattered before questioning could finish, and Marsh disappeared into the wider, drifting network of communes up and down the coast. With no body, rumors filled the silence, and they spread with unusual speed and unusual specificity. Locals began repeating details that hadn't come from any official report. that Walt had been buried alive, that his death had involved ritual, that his skull had been separated from his body and hidden apart from the rest of him. Nobody could say where the rumors started. They simply appeared, fully formed, and multiplied. Then came the detail that didn't fit anything. On Saturday, June 12, 1971, a hiker on Thornwell Land reported finding a rusted iron marker driven into the ground at the northeast corner. A boundary stake, but old, hand-forged, decades older than any equipment used on the ranch. Etched into it were 3 initials that matched no one connected to Walt, the ranch, or the commune. It matched instead the surname of the family who vanished from that same corner of land in 1887. The stake was logged into evidence, and then, through a filing error nobody could later explain, lost. The case went cold for 6 years. Then, on Thursday, March 3, 1977, a former Family of Light member, facing unrelated charges in another state, offered information in exchange for leniency. He told investigators where to dig: the northeast corner, 40 yards past the old fence line, past the spot where Juno used to stop and refuse to go further. What they found did not match the rumors. There was no ritual, no severed anything. There was Walt, and there was something the coroner's report did not expect: a second, much older set of remains, sharing the same shallow ground, positioned as though they had been resting there long before Walt was placed above them. Testing dated the second set of remains to roughly 90 years prior, consistent, investigators noted without further comment, with the 1887 disappearance recorded in the county's oldest files. The horror of the case was never only what Marsh's followers did to Walt. It was the realization that whoever chose that burial site chose it with intention, that the ground had already been used once, and someone, at some point, had known that. Marsh was located and arrested that same month. In interviews, he never confirmed the rumors he'd let spread for 8 years, and he never explained why that specific corner of the property was chosen. When asked directly by investigators why he picked that spot, witnesses in the room said he only replied that the ground already knew what to do with him. He offered nothing further. 2 followers were charged alongside him. The case, as far as the courts were concerned, was closed. Walt's sister, Marguerite, still lives 40 miles from Thornwell. She kept Juno until the dog died of old age on Tuesday, October 9th, 1979. And according to Marguerite, for the rest of her life, Juno would not walk northeast through any open field, in any yard, on any property, for reasons nobody could train out of her. Thornwell Ranch was sold twice more and eventually abandoned to lease agreements nobody renewed. On Tuesday, April 12, 1994, a county survey team re-examining old boundary disputes in the area found that the original 1887 property line, the one that didn't match any modern map, extended slightly further than anyone had accounted for. Under current zoning, that extension falls beneath what is now a paved access road. Never excavated, never checked. Nobody has gone looking. And somewhere in Marguerite's photo albums, there's still a picture of Juno from that August in 1969, sitting in the dirt, facing northeast, staring at a patch of ground that at the time looked like nothing at all.